So, John, we have a lot to talk about your actual album Reunion and many other things. But just before I started recording this, I was gloating about the fact that I completely guessed that you were the anteater on The Masked Singer. I clocked it from episode 1, but you were about to tell me a funny story
Yeah.
about your Masked Singer experience.
Yeah, I well, first of all, the costume was crazy. It was really hard to, I couldn't see out of it because the eyes were up here, and it's a whole thing. Super hot, constricting and weird. So anyway, I made it through to the third round, and I was playing the Newport Folk Festival, which was on my bucket list for many years. Played it in the early evening, and then got in a car, raced to Boston Logan Airport, and jumped on a red eye to LA. Got to LA. I think by the time I got to the hotel, it was about 3 in the morning. And I had an 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. call, and I had to sing. So I was completely out of it when finally, I don't even know if I slept. But anyway, got to the thing, put the costume on, go out there and, run around and try to do choreography and sing some crazy Backstreet Boys song or whatever they had at the time. And to be honest with you, when I finally got unmasked, I have to say I was actually okay. I was totally okay with it. I was like, good, this is good because I had been going back and forth to LA for like 3 weeks in a row. And it was crazy. So anyway, so it was good. It was a great experience. What I liked about the show was that everyone was so positive.
Hmm.
The audience is positive. The judges are great. They just want to lift people up. There's no real negativity to it, and it's fun. So I'm glad I had the experience, but once was enough.
And no All Stars for you, Masked Singer All Stars. I would watch
Oh
that.
no, they haven't
Well,
called you. Put it that way.
one other thing that's crazy, and I don't want to get into any of the legal stuff or whatever. I know you can't talk about it, but by the time your episode of The Masked Singer aired, like you were very much in the news with what was going on with the legal stuff with Hall Notes. So like this like fun thing is happening on TV while you're in the headlines or something else. Like that was very strange timing. And I mean, you couldn't have scripted that, obviously. It's very weird.
Yeah, to say that the stress level was ratcheted up would be an understatement.
Wow.
I'm pretty tough, and I've been around a long time, so I remain. I like to pride myself in being a professional, and I do what I got to do, and deal with what I got to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Reunion before you do that, just for tradition's sake. Just gonna do this.
I got it. I got it. All
Only
right.
the one. There's no airing here, all right? It's
All
just
right.
it's just the one.
You,
But it's a
you, boy, you know how to flatter a guy. Okay.
it's a tradition. I feel like I have to wear this every time I talk to you. It's also it's pretty awesome. But yeah, Reunion, the album, obviously given what we were just talking about with, the fact that, you were in a group that apparently is no more. It's interesting to call an album Reunion when kind of the opposite of a reunion is happening with Hall Notes. But I want to talk about the symbolism of the title, about it sort of either getting back to yourself, getting back to your roots with the kind of music you grew up with and the covers you chose. Like it's, definitely probably raises some eyebrows at this point in your career to call an album Reunion.
Yes. Yes, you're 100% right. The album was inspired, and I'll just tell you what the authentic and original inspiration was inspired by my father. And my father's 100.
Mhm.
He looked like he was ready to take the next step. He was really pretty bad, and he was musing and reflecting and very melancholy, talking about reuniting with mom, who had passed away a number of years ago. And I thought about the idea of him having a reunion on a much deeper, more emotional and a more you know uh, metaphysical level, I guess you'd say. And when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about myself, and I started thinking about how I was reuniting with my true self, with this new creative freedom that I found myself experiencing and reveling in, and really enjoying, and realizing that there was a new future ahead of me. So the song really had nothing really to do with what was happening with Daryl and I. But of course, you can't help but make the try to make some connection. And I guess subtly and maybe more than subtly, there is a connection there. But for me personally, it was really about finding my true self. It was about finding my true self and realizing that there was a there was a deeper level of reuniting that could be maybe talked about in a song, with metaphors and things like that. So that's really, I had no intentions of trying to lead people down an Easter egg path or anything like that. I'm definitely not in the Taylor Swift category of leading her fans on. But no, it had nothing to do with that. But of course, you couldn't help make that, make assumption that maybe there was something to it. But it wasn't. And maybe it's just maybe that's how, ironically life works.
Well, you definitely seem on, even before this album, on a real creative tear. Last time I talked with you was at the Grammy Museum, and at that time you weren't putting out albums, but you were rolling out a single a month. You were, the music. I know some of the songs on Reunion actually, because I was looking at the lyrics for each, actually were written a long time ago, like as recently as now, or as long ago as 96 or 2010 or whatever. But you definitely seem to be on a creative tear, and what it you know again, it's, is there some coinciding of kind of closing one chapter with your duo, and you seem like very at peace with that, and you seem very energized, like, is it sort of a one door closes, another door opens kind of thing?
Yes, it is. What people perhaps don't realize, unless you've really followed me closely, I've been making, this will be 8 solo albums over the past 20 years. Okay. Now, but here's the difference, and this is the key to the whole thing. It was the most important difference, is that every time I would do a project, it was shoehorned in between my commitment to Hall and Oates. And I was very loyal, and I felt like I needed to be a good team player. I needed to be a good partner. I needed to be a good, band leader, and you know, handle, businessman, all the things that are entailed in be in a partnership and a collaboration. And I prided myself in that, and I wanted to give myself 100% to it. But at the same time, I had this creative tug that made me want to do something else. But I was squeezing it in and shoehorning it in on these other, with the Hall and Oates commitments, and it became very hard for me. I felt like I was leading two lives,
Hmm.
and it was like I take one hat off and I put another hat on. But so I felt like I couldn't really commit to my solo projects and the things I really wanted to do individually. And then I got to the point where life started dictating things to me. Here again, my father, aging and ready to pass on. Me becoming older, seeing that the horizon was not that far off in the distance for me personally, and seeing my contemporaries, people passing away, becoming ill, not being able to perform or to create anymore, or being debilitated in some way. These things are things that you don't think about when you're younger, but these are things you definitely start thinking about when you're older. And I'm at that point now. I started to see this as a reality, and I couldn't afford anymore to waste time. I had to commit to something where I could really be 100% committed and invest my energy, my time, my focus onto that. Because, in the way I look at it, there's no more times for rehearsals for me. It's showtime every day. And that's what I needed to do. And that's what precipitated the realization that I had to commit and be 100% invested in me now. Sounds selfish, sounds self-indulgent, maybe so, I don't care.
No, I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, am I hearing you correctly that the ending of the Hall and Oates chapter of your life coincides or is related to these epiphanies you were having about
Absolutely.
time and
absolutely. And the business issues, which are really purely business issues and legal issues,
Hmm.
they precipitated it. And they made me realize that, okay, I'm not going, I'm really, talk about squeezing things in. Now I'm really being distracted, and my energy and my focus and my emotions are being really siphoned away on another level, and that's not good either. And so I needed to rectify it. I needed to solve whatever issues were points of contention, and move on. And that's what I did.
Well, I don't, like I said, I don't want to ask you about the legal issues because, to be honest, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV. I wouldn't even know what to ask, and I wouldn't maybe
Well,
even understand.
quite frankly, it's boring. It's
Yeah.
boring. It's a bunch of lawyers jabbering back and forth, and a bunch of legal minutia, which really doesn't, really quite boring, and I don't think it's that interesting. But it was something that needed to be dealt with, and now it's being dealt with the way it is.
Well, it's interesting because, you could think of all sorts of great bands, the Beatles, whatever, where they start off as friends in the trenches, playing small clubs, and then, things get so big, and then you become an Inc, an INC, an LLC, whatever it is, like,
So
yeah. So, but you're in a great position of privilege because, I'm not thinking of any specific examples, but there are some artists that maybe weren't as successful back in the day or whatever, didn't sell as many albums, where they probably kind of have to keep that commitment and keep touring, even if their heart's not in it, even if they don't get along with their bandmate or whatever, because they need to make a living. You're in a pretty great position that you can just be like, I'm going to do this.
listen, and I'm very cognizant of that fact, and I'm also very respectful of it, and I'm very appreciative that the success of Hall Oates has enabled me to be where I am. I don't take that for granted one iota. And Daryl Hall's contribution and his great talent is a major component of the fact that I'm where I am right now. And so, I have an incredible amount of respect for the body of work that we've created that will live on and endure. And I'm really, in a way, it feels like it doesn't need to be restated. I don't need to go out there and be singing those songs again. Their songs are forever. And I love the fact that, people feel like they're part of the soundtrack of their lives. Well, guess what? They always will be. Whether Daryl and I are standing on a stage doing it or not is immaterial to that fact. Those songs will live forever. And I'm very fortunate and very appreciative of that.
Well, speaking of soundtracks of one's life, going back to Reunion, you do a couple of covers on it. You cover John Prine actually as we're doing this interview right now. That single just dropped today.
Yeah.
And he's someone who he actually was one of the first people to pass during COVID, one of the first. So, yeah, I guess just in general, with the couple of cover songs that you did on this album, like what made you choose those songs?
Every song on this album is intentional. There's nothing that's put on this album just on a whim. Oh, that's a good song, I'll just record that. No. Everything has a personal connection to me. What people don't realize about John Prine is that he was making his first album the same time Daryl and I were making our first album in the same studio with the same producer at the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
We would cross paths in the hallway, going from his session to our session or whatever. And we use the same producer, the great Arif Martin, one of the best producers of all time. So there's this connection. Now, John and I weren't that close as the years went on, but I did get to sit in with him here and there. And so when I was asked to celebrate his birthday celebration at the Ryman, I was asked to do a song. I picked Long Monday, and I just loved playing it. And the reaction I got when I played it live with his band, with John Prine's band,
Oh, wow.
was amazing. And his widow, Fiona, came up to me after the show and said she really loved my interpretation of that song. And I thought, wow, okay, this means something. So I recorded it. So that's why, as I said, every song is intentional. There's some sort of personal connection and some real. There's a reason those songs are on this record.
What was, sorry, just refresh my memory. There's one or two other cover songs on this record.
Yeah, I did a song called "Them Dance Hall Girls," which was a song that was written by a guy named Alan Fraser from Montreal, Canada. When I was in Europe, before Daryl and I got together, we were friends, we knew each other, but we weren't working together. I came back, and it was one of the first songs that made me want to kind of it lit my fire in terms of songwriting. There was something that captured me about that song. It was like 1970 or 71, I can't remember. Um, and I thought one day I'm going to record this. Now, of course, Daryl and I immediately began to work together around that time, and that song didn't resonate with what we were trying to do. We were creating something new. And but in the back of my mind, I always knew that I'd record that song one day. So it brings me back to kind of the immediate time prior to Daryl and I getting together. And in a sense, it was this an ending of my a certain period of my life, which I kept way in the background, but never forgot about.
When you mentioned the intentionality, and I mentioned a couple minutes ago that there are some of the originals on this album that, when I look at the date they were
Yeah.
written 30, 20, 10 years ago. What was
So,
the process of dusting? I don't know if dusting off is the right
yeah,
word, but
it is the
songs
right.
you never, okay, dusting off songs that, for whatever reason, did not come out at that time.
Because I never had a place for them. I never forgot those songs. And all of a sudden I began to assemble this body of work that started to have a coherent quality. And then I went, oh, now's the time. And I went back and grabbed the one song. And in fact, the song I Found Love, which I recorded in 2007 on an album called Thousand Miles of Life, which hardly anyone ever heard. The reason I put that, I redid it. I redid my part, my vocal, my guitar, and remixed it. But I kept the essence of the record, which was Sam Bush, Jerry Douglas, and Bela Fleck. Now, I was huge admirers of them, but I had just come to Nashville and I didn't know them. Managed to get them in the studio at the same time. And the engineer I was working with at the time, who unfortunately just recently passed away as well, a guy named Bill Vorndick, amazing classic country engineer. He told me, he said, John, this is very unusual. He goes, these guys haven't played together in a really long time, but somehow you got them in the same room. And that's the day I met them. And
Oh,
they
wow.
played so beautifully, and it was so inspiring to me that I could have these amazing musicians. And I thought, these guys are really good. I better up my game. I got to start practicing. And since that time, we've become great friends. Sam and Jerry and I, we've toured together. We've recorded together, and I have the utmost respect for them. So I knew that they needed to be on the album. So what I did was I kept their parts, which is just classic, and updated the song a bit.
So talking about upping your game, I mean, you're very humble. I don't know how much your game needed to be upped, but
Oh, you'd be surprised.
well,
You'd be
what we were talking about, obviously you were in a long running group that even when you weren't putting out records, were touring pretty regularly, up until a couple of years ago. So yeah, I guess how is working with new people kind of, yeah, did it energize you? Did it stretch you? Because, I don't want to claim that anyone would get complacent, but I guess there's the potential to get complacent when you play with the same person for 50 years or something, I would imagine.
You could say that.
Okay.
You could say that sleepwalking through a show is something that professional musicians sometimes fall into the trap of. Um, Not me, but you never know. But anyway, no. But seriously, in general, my Nashville experience, what it did was I realized there was a level of professionalism, there was a level of skill, musicianship that was really, really it was new, it was on a very high level, and I realized that I needed to step up my individual playing and everything. And I was playing with people like Vince Gill and recording with people like that, some of the greatest musicians on the planet. And I realized that, that the level and the standard was set and the bar was set very high. And I loved it because it really gave me a kick in the ass.
Awesome. And did AJ Croce, you wrote the title track with him.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Did you know him before?
No, we had never met. In fact, here again, but with the intentional, the concept of being intentional. I met him at the John Prine celebration at the Ryman because we were put in the same dressing room with each other. And we just found ourselves together hanging out. And we started talking about old music, songs from the 20s and 30s. He was describing how he inherited his father's extensive vinyl collection and how he loved all the Louis Armstrong and Fats
Wow.
Waller and all this. And I was like, wow, what an interesting guy. And when I came up with the idea for Reunion, I had some key lines and I knew what I wanted to do and I knew the direction I wanted to go, but I didn't have a musical framework for it. And I thought, you know what? This guy might be the guy. And I just took a wild chance and I came to his house and I said, I got this idea for a song. I don't know where we're going with it. Let's see what happens. And he was the right guy. He did an amazing interpretation of it. And interestingly enough, he just recorded it with his band,
Oh, wow.
and he will be putting it out on an upcoming album for himself.
Did you know his father?
No, no,
Oh, okay.
I was a fan, but no, I never met him. No.
And so looking at the credits, obviously it's, you've mentioned some of the names already, but I saw Joe Henry. Is that the Joe Henry? Like the,
Oh, there's three Joe Henrys.
okay. So it's
The
not the Americana artist, Joe Henry.
No, it's
Okay.
not. But however, it's Joe Henry, the lyricist and author, who's written songs for John Denver, even Frank Sinatra. He's had a Frank Sinatra cut.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
he lives in Colorado, right near where our house is. And yeah, he's that Joe Henry.
So how did you, I know you used to live in Colorado. I guess you still have a house there, but you
Yeah, we
mostly
still have
are.
Well, I tried to during the pandemic, I was spending a lot of time there because I wanted to, get out of the city, breathe some clean air. And that's when we ran into each other. We'd known each other for 25 years. And it was one of those kind of funny conversations, like literally at the post office. Hey, what are you up to? I said, not much, he said, we've never written a song together. I said, now's the time. And so that's what happened.
But you mostly live in Nashville, and it sounds like moving there. I mean, I know it's been a while, it's been like 20 years or something, but like living there really galvanized you. The community, I did the community there. I'm under the impression that it's, even though it's a big city, it's still like a small town. There's a real tight knit songwriters community, musicians community. Did they welcome you right away coming in from, this kind of pop rock superstar world?
I went there in the 90s. I started
Okay.
going in the around 96, 97. A friend of mine was a songwriter and said, you need to come to Nashville and write songs. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just bang out a couple country hits, hey, no problem. Well, that didn't work out too well. But what I realized by going there was that it really, Nashville was completely different in those days. And it was kind of like old boys club, It was like, are you really committed to this? Are you
Mm.
really gonna be here? Or are you just kind of this pop guy who just pop drops in and drops out, and what I realized was if I really wanted to be part of that musical community, I needed to commit to it and be part of it and live here. So during the early 2000s, my wife and I got an apartment, and that changed everything because I'd come for a couple days or a week. And someone would say, "Oh, you're going to be here next Monday. Come and sing background on my album." And I'm like, "No, I've got to leave. I've got." And so I could never get any momentum. Soon as we moved here, everything changed. All of a sudden, I became part of the Americana Music Association. I was playing with these guys. They were lighting my fire, reigniting my fire for folk and bluegrass and blues and acoustic music that was really my real musical DNA. And I realized what I could do was I could rediscover my past and use it as a springboard to create something new for myself in the future.
So I've talked with you before, and when I've interviewed Daryl, actually, I've talked about how over the last, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, Hall & Oates in general started to have what I witnessed is more of a critical turning of the tides, like a renaissance of people. You got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but a lot of people just started to really cite Hall and Oates as being, rightfully so, one of the greats. But a little bit of a loaded question. Hear me out. Do you feel personally for you, you have sense? Because sometimes when it's a duo and one of the people in the duo is primarily the lead singer or whatever, more the face of the band to the average kind of casual fan, the other person kind of gets short shrift. Do you feel now, especially with you doing, being in Nashville, doing all these solo things, all the things you're talking about, have you noticed like a little bit of a turning of the tide for you, like respect for your legacy? Have you felt that?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think people, the casual fan, could care less, I'm sure. Daryl's voice is so outstanding and is so much tied to the big hits. And the MTV, the MTV image, the imagery that MTV was so powerful to plant in people's minds during that era. Um, yes, someone like me, I wouldn't say I was marginalized, but I was definitely not taken seriously. And I'm not doing this as to kind of change that. I'm just happy to have a forum where I can be myself and let people make their own decisions about it. I always knew the kind of talent that I had, but I don't feel that I had the format to really showcase it. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
I mean, you're a great singer as well. I mean, people clocked your voice as the anteater pretty fast. And I remember you said something. I mean, not that I want to talk that much more about the Masked Singer, but I actually watched your reveal last night just to, have it in my mind. I still had it, and you said something. It was like one of the best things you'd ever done because of the fact that you
Yeah.
could perform without the preconceptions of who you are.
Yeah, that was one of my motivations for doing it. When they asked me to do it, I wasn't really sure I wanted to do it. I thought it was a little bit hokey and maybe a little cartoonish. Really? And but I thought, okay, this will be this like weird kind of experiment to see, because people don't really recognize my voice. At least they haven't up until maybe now. So I wanted to see what was going to happen. So it was kind of interesting. And I loved what Nicole said, and Jenny, and the judges. They were all saying, like, it sounds like home. It sounds like I remember they said something like that, and then they said there was something about it that touched them, which was really satisfying for me.
Weird question. I've never actually thought about this, but you guys having been a duo and both being great singers, different sounding singers, obviously, but great singers in your own ways. Why is it that Daryl seems to have done the lion's share of the lead singing during that time? I mean, it's a weird, I've never thought to ask that, but it just
I know
dawned on me.
I know exactly why. Back in the mid early 70s, we released a couple singles with me singing lead, and they did not connect. They did not resonate and connect with radio.
Hmm.
The moment Daryl started singing, his voice immediately connected at radio. And once that happened, it was a fait accompli. I mean, that was it. He would, and look, you can't take anything away. He's one of the greatest
No,
singers of all.
but did
Believe
that,
me, I've stood next to him for 50 years. I know for a fact.
you won't
I
get in.
he's just an amazing singer.
No, you don't get any argument from me. I just wonder, did that bother you or dent your confidence at all? That like
Yeah,
I'm thinking of Tears for Fears. Actually, it's interesting because who you guys toured with, like Roland actually did a lot of singing for Tears for Fears, but the biggest singles were done by Kurt. It's kind of a weird situation.
yeah, there's a lot of parallels between those two guys and Daryl and I, in that regard. No, it didn't bother me. I felt like I was really my strong point was handling a lot of the stuff that the public would never know about. Production, the behind the scenes, the band, the equipment, the nuts and bolts kind of stuff. I'm a pretty nuts and bolts kind of guy. And I don't mind that because I'm good at it. So I thought, for me, it was like, okay, what's the best contribution I can make to making sure, making sure we're very successful. And I think I made a huge contribution, but it's not
Obviously, yeah.
not the type of contribution that the average person will ever notice or know about.
But it doesn't, you don't really care if people give you the credit for that.
My ego is not that needy.
Well, the nuts and bolts thing, knowing that source of probably serves you quite well, because if I'm not mistaken, all the music that you've put out in recent years has been, you're kind of a one-man shop, right? You're independent, you put out your own stuff. So you kind of were put in a good position to be able to do that.
Yeah, I had a 50-year internship.
You mentioned that on The Masked Singer, people were saying your voice sounded like home. Do you feel in the recent years with the music you've been putting out that you've come home, basically?
Yes. And not only that, I've learned how to make the most out of my vocal skill. Um, and it has to do with the keys that I'm singing in, has to do with the type. When I'm writing songs now, I'm writing specifically for my voice.
Mm.
So there's been a lot of things, a lot of nuance to that goes into the fact that if you hear this album and you think, wow, he sounds really good. Well, there's a reason for it. There's a reason because I've pinpointed and I've honed and I've refined where I sound best, how I sound best, and what to do with my voice.
Were you writing before, I guess presumably for, at least in the context of your former band, for Daryl, or were you just writing with no voice in mind, or?
When we would write together, if you a lot of times if Daryl was taking the lead on the songwriting, which happened frequently, he would put things in keys that worked for him. And
Mm.
if the reality was that he was going to sing it, there was no reason to change it or try to do anything with it. So even some songs like there's Hall Oates songs that if I do one live, I'm probably singing it in a little bit lower key that suits my voice better. So yeah, I mean, there's just a certain mechanical things that as you evolve as a musician, you either, if you want to fight it, you can fight it, but is it really going to be to your best interest? You have to make certain compromises.
Well, now you don't have to, I guess. I mean,
Right.
for
That's
the
exactly
most part.
that's right.
Well, the one last thing I kind of want to ask about, putting a bow on the whole Hall and Oates thing is you seem obviously very at peace. They had a good long run. You achieved a lot historically, commercially, critically, finally. And you're in this great new chapter. But were you surprised at all by, I mean, I don't know how much you go on the internet or look at social media, but people were devastated by the uh, seeming breakup of, or, the end of Hall and Oates. Like, and I don't know if you even noticed this, but for some reason, a lot of the lyrics or titles of Hall and Oates songs, like, really were good. Like, people were like, "Say it isn't so," I can't go for that. Like, the jokes wrote themselves. But yeah, people were really like just really sad, like genuinely sad. You're not sad, I assume, but like, were you surprised by that reaction?
I don't know. Yeah, I was. I mean, the Beatles broke up. Like Led Zeppelin broke up. I mean, come on, folks. It, what's the big deal? People have business disagreement. Got to sort it out, folks. Look, it's over as far as I'm concerned. And it's just, the songs will live on, and I think I'm probably repeating myself, but if these songs were the soundtrack of people's lives, they're still the soundtracks of people's lives. The two guys aren't.
It's just flattering that people really were that invested that they
Yeah,
felt like
yeah.
they were like
No,
losing a friend or something.
it's very flattering, and that's great in terms of people's passion about music. And but here again, those songs will live on, and
Mhm.
I hope people remember the songs the way they should have sounded and the way they do sound on those recordings from the decades of the 70s and 80s that are very unique and distinctive, and that's what makes those songs magical.
Well, the plus side is much as when the Beatles broke up, we now had four solo careers that we could follow. We could have Lennon albums and McCartney albums and
Sure.
Great George Harrison records. You know, Daryl's still doing his thing, and we can,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go see him tour with Elvis Costello, and you're doing your thing. So it's like now we get, I guess, double. We get Hall and we get Oates, or I'll put it as Oates and Hall. I'll say that for the.
And just be careful what you wish for. When AI gets more developed, you may find you've got a new Hall and Oates album, whether you like it or not.
Really,
Not from me, but you never know.
you
You
never know. What
never
is
know what
next?
the world is going to create. What?
What did you say?
I said you never know what AI will create.
Oh, you're talking about AI. Didn't you say someone like generated a fake, did like played you a song in the style of Hall and
Yeah,
Oates, and
yeah,
you were, it
yeah.
was actually like okay?
I messed around with GTP when it first came out, and I was astounded. And I thought, oh, what hath God wrought? Here we go. We're opening up a very, 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 uncharted map of the future. So who knows what's going to happen?
I personally would rather hear the real thing. I don't,
What happens? What happens? What happens? Let's take, for instance, I'll just use David Bowie as an example. What happens if the record company that owns the rights to David Bowie music, what if they decide to create a new David Bowie album and has AI extrapolate his vocal, some of the lyrics, some of the music, the styles, and it all comes into the computer and it spits out a new David Bowie record.
Or we could have a Hall and Oates hologram tour like ABBA, I guess. I don't want that. I'm just saying it could happen.
I hope, if they have the Hall & Oates hologram tour, I hope they don't put me in those pink leather pants.
It would be a Hall
So
Oates
you like pink?
gram.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Pink's all right for me. It would, instead of a hologram, it could be called a Hall Oates gram.
Okay, enough. I think
Enough.
we're,
I
yeah.
don't want that to happen. I want the real thing. So you, organic flesh and blood person, are what's next for you? Obviously, this album is coming out, but it sounds like you're not gonna rest.
No, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to somewhere new.
What is your dream project? I'll leave
Oh, it's
you.
all over the place. I'm playing all over. I leave on Friday and playing Corona, California. Then I'm playing 3 nights at the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, which is awesome.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
then playing Chicago and St. Louis. Then I'm going to London. I'm playing with Richard Marx at the Royal Albert Hall, and then doing a private show at this really hip club in London. Um, and then who knows? I can't remember what I'm doing. Then they're doing the Rochester Jazz Festival. Oh, and I'm headlining the Philadelphia Folk Festival,
Oh,
which is
that's amazing.
crazy bucket list thing for me because when I was a kid, I went to the Philadelphia Folk Festival and sat in front of the stage watching Mississippi John Hurt and Doc Watson and so now all of a sudden I'm going to go back and headline the festival that was so important to me as a kid growing up. And I'm going to play some of those same songs that I heard the originators play. So
Wow.
it's going to be cool.
That's very full circle. I guess since you're very much obviously even though you have nostalgia, like you just mentioned, you're a very forward-looking person, not a backward-looking person. What is left on your bucket list of musical things you want to do? You said that's a bucket list thing. You checked that one off.
Well, I just worked with a guy named Devin Gilfillian. He's a new singer, an R&B singer from Philadelphia, young guy. He's great. We wrote an incredible like vintage soul song, and we're going to release it this fall. So it's just a wide open palette. Whatever happens, happens.
Well, I'm excited for what's next. I will talk to you when that happens, and I'll be ready. Uh, and
Okay,
I'm very happy for you. Congratulations on everything you got going on.
appreciate you. Okay, thanks.